preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. The second is from the 3rd chapter, verses 10 and 11. I have seen the God-given task with which the sons of men are to be occupied. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity in their hearts, except that no one can find out the work that God does from beginning to end. Thank you.
Ecclesiastes. It is, without doubt, the most contemporary book in the Bible, because Solomon is us. His world, in many respects, though far different from his contemporaries, and in some ways different from ours, but in principle, what he struggled with and what led him into this and that are the very things that we have to struggle with. So let's have a look. First of all, he starts out by saying, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. And that becomes a refrain throughout the book. There are some things in the book that he mentions more than once. One of the things that he mentions is under the sun. That means in the world we live in the flesh. And so he is trying to find the meaning of life under the sun with things that are themselves under the sun. And we live in a culture that tries to do that. We have all kinds of diversions and discretionary pursuits that we can entangle ourselves in. The average person in Solomon's day, well, couldn't have dreamed of that kind of freedom. They basically got up and went to work when the sun was rising, and they went back home and went to bed. They had to mostly work. There hardly was, even in Jesus' day, a middle class. You were either very wealthy or you were just a poor person. There were a few in the middle class, but not that many. So our poorer class today would be considered something that would have been envied by most of the people throughout the history of the world, and even some today. So let's have a look at Solomon and see what he comes up with when he tries what human beings so often try, to find meaning, happiness, contentment under the sun. First of all, he's the wisest man of his day. God appears to him in a dream before he's going to be the next king. And he offers him whatever. And most people would have chosen riches. He wound up being quite rich. But he chose wisdom. And so he is the wisest man that I would guess on the face of the earth. He is one of the wealthiest, if not the wealthiest men on the face of the earth. He can have whatever he wants in life. And he went to excess with wives and concubines and wealth and attainments and buildings and you name it. And he was able to do it. And he did. So the first thing I want us to look at in chapter 1, verses 12 and 14, we'll be wending our way through Ecclesiastes, is the folly of wisdom. And again, this is from an under-the-sun perspective. The preacher has been king over Israel and Jerusalem, and I applied my heart to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and striving after wind. So this wisest of all men, in trying to use his wisdom to find under the sun what he would find contentment and pleasure with, he says, I couldn't do it. He also tried pleasure, chapter 2, verses 1 through 2. I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. But behold, this all was vanity. I said of laughter, it is mad, and of pleasure, what use is it? Well, he's persistent. You got to give him that. In chapter 2, verses 4 through 8 and 10 through 11, the folly of stuff, possessions, having things. I made great works. I built houses and I planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks and planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. I made myself pools from which to water the forest of growing trees. I brought male and female servants, had slaves who were born in my house, and also great possessions and herds and flocks, more than any who had been before me in Jerusalem. I also gathered to myself silver and gold and treasure of all kings and provinces. I got singers, both men and women, and many concubines, the delight of the sons of men. And then with verse 10, and whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart had found pleasure in all my toil, and this was to be my reward for my toil. Then I considered all that my hands had done, and the toil that I had expended in doing it. And behold, all was vanity and striving after wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. Well, he did conclude, chapter 2, verse 12, and then 15 through 17, that wisdom exceeded folly, but there's sort of a but. So I turned to consider wisdom and madness and folly. But what can a man do who comes after the king? Only what has already been done. Then I said in my heart, what happens to the fool will happen to me also. Why then have I been so very wise? And I said to my heart, let this also be vanity. For of the wise and as for the fool, there is no enduring remembrance, seeing that in the days to come all will have been forgotten. How the wise does just like the fool, so I hated life, because what is done under the sun was grievous to me, for all is vanity and striving after wind. Labor, he considers in chapter 2, verse 18. I hated all my toil in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me. Then he talks about the grievous task that was part of our reading that God has given man to do. I have seen the business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. He has made everything beautiful or appropriate in its time also. He has put eternity into a man's heart, yet so that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. And this is sort of the, I think, key verses in Ecclesiastes. He said, we are an inquisitive-minded folk. Giraffes don't muse through the day of what does it all mean. They don't worry about which giraffe has the best spots or the longest neck or anything like that. So, as far as I know. So, but us, man, we're always looking at trying to make sense of things. Look at today, for instance, people who reject that God is a creator. They have used their brains to come up with all kinds of things to try to explain why things are, as opposed to why why nothing doesn't exist. And it just hasn't worked. They thought that with the telescopes that they were making, and the latest one that they have made, and they've got another one in the works. And as we've observed, and it's true, science only knows what it knows at the moment. Whatever else isn't known, when they come to know it, they got to go back to the drawing board. So there was hope amongst secular scientists, and they're not all secular. that the images that were coming back would dispel the Big Bang Theory, that there was a beginning, in other words. Because, as philosophically stated, everything that has come into being has a cause. And everything about the universe says, we didn't used to be here. You could take it from where it is now and start scooching it back because it's going out that way until you got to whatever it was that was in the Big Bang. But then what was before that? That's a little bit tricky. So humans have tried their best to find out what this is all about without factoring God into the picture. And it just really hasn't gone very well. So this idea that God has placed eternity in our hearts, that's God's smart. Putting something in us that would not find satisfaction under the sun. What would that tend to do if you would go where it goes and don't try to do it yourself like Solomon's doing and many people do? There must be a creator. Francis Schaeffer, this is one of his main arguments when he deal with the secular philosophers of his day, is let's just look at the evidence. First of all, the evidence overwhelmingly says that what we have here, every molecule, every atom, didn't used to be. It was created. So, okay, what makes sense? Well, first of all, a singular creator as opposed to hundreds of gods and goddesses makes sense because there's a tremendous amount of cohesiveness and orderliness, and obviously coming from a central mind. And why, considering if we're just molecules, why do we think flowers are beautiful? They're just molecules, for goodness sakes. Why do we have a notion of beauty? Why do we have notions of morality? Why do we think that some things this really shouldn't be? I mean, molecules shouldn't have notions like that. And then there is consciousness. I gritted my teeth and dug my heels in and read about 14 pages of somebody's explanation of why consciousness was all in the brain, only to come to the conclusion that, yeah, right. But consciousness cannot be explained. There's this little thing in our head, and it's in there, according to them. Where? Well, good luck with that. Why am I running a 24-hour waking hour movie in my head all day long? What is it? Well, as I recall, we're created in the image of God. And we can muse about things and consider things that other beings in our universe cannot. So God has given us that grievous task to try to find answers, because we are a curious sort of folk, but not letting us find them where they're not to be found under the sun. And again, that would cause you, if you were honest with yourself, to look elsewhere. Now, he's dropped that on us, and now he continues on, though. The plight of the oppressed, chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. Again, I saw all the oppressions that are done under the sun, and behold, the tears of the oppressed, and they had no one to comfort them. On the side of the oppressors, there was power. On the side of the oppressors, there was power and no one to comfort them. And I thought the dead who were already dead are more fortunate than the living who still are alive. But better than both is the one who has not yet been born and has not seen the evil deeds that are done under the sun. I think about life, he says. And look at all the oppression that's out there. Even the oppressors at some point, they're all going to die. And it would be better to just not be born. And if it's under the sun, if that's true, he's coming up with a lot of facts. He's telling it like it is, though it's a very depressing picture. Chapter 5, verses 1 and 2 and verse 7. The need to guard your attitude toward God. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God, to draw near, to listen is better than to offer the sacrifice of fools, but they do not know that they are doing and that it is evil. But not be rash with your mouth, nor let your heart be hasty to utter a word before God. For God is in heaven, and you are on earth, therefore let your words be few. For when dreams increase and words grow many, there is vanity, but God is the one you must fear. It's basically saying, if you don't say much, you won't get into much trouble. Even if you're trying to do something for God, you better watch out, because you're going to mess up. So just keep it down. Don't really get into it that much. The futility of riches, and he was rich. Chapter 5, verse 10. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money. Wow. Nor he who loves wealth with his income. This too is vanity. Futility of life in general. Chapter 6, verses 1 and 2. There is an evil that I have seen under the sun, and it lies heavy on mankind. A man to whom God gives wealth, possessions, and honor, so that he lacks nothing of all that he desires, yet God does not give him the power to enjoy them, but a stranger enjoys them. This is vanity. It's all grievous. What happens to your stuff when you die? Somebody you probably don't even know is going to wind up enjoying it. He gets back into the wisdom and folly thing in chapter 7, 23 and 24, sort of a comparison of them, opposite ends of the spectrum. All this I have testified by wisdom. I said, I will be wise, but it was far from me. That which has been is far off and deep, very deep. Who can find it? Solomon, wisest man in the world, you're saying that your wisdom couldn't figure it out? That your wisdom wasn't enough? Well, that's what he's saying. He couldn't find the things he was looking for just with being wise. And under the sun, you cannot. He says that you need to respect the king, sort of a self-serving thing. But notice what he says about that in chapter 8, verses 2 through 4, and then verses 8 through 10. I say, keep the king's command because of God's oath to him. Be not hasty to go from his presence. Do not take your stand in an evil cause, for he does whatever he pleases. For the word of the king is supreme, and who can say to him, what are you doing? The man who has control over your earthly life does whatever he wants to. No man has power to retain the spirit or power over the day of his death. There is no discharge from war nor from wickedness to deliver those to whom it is given. All this I observed while applying my heart to all that is done under the sun, when man had power over man to hurt. Those who fear God will do well. Then I saw the wicked buried. They used to go hand in hand out of the holy place. They were praised in the city. They had done such good things. This also is vanity. Then, men in God's hands. Job got into a lot of this thinking as he was increasingly beset in life to where he felt like, oh, God can just do anything he wants to me. And he is, and it's not fair, and it's not right. Verses 1 and 2 of chapter 9. But all this I laid to heart, examining it all, how the neighbors and the wise, or the righteous and the wise and their deeds are in the hand of God, whether it is love or hate, man does not know. Both are before him. It is the same for all, since the same events happen to the righteous and the wicked, to the good and to the evil, to the clean and the unclean, to him who sacrifices and to him who does not sacrifice. As the good one is, so is the sinner, and he who swears is as he who shuns an oath. Now, what difference does it make? Why bother? It all goes to the same place, and nobody really finds happiness under the sun. Chapter 9, verse 10 and 11. Try your best. Give it your best shot, but whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. For there is no work or thought or knowledge or wisdom in Sheol to which you are going. At the end of the day, even if you do that, that's the only time you're going to have to do anything, because when you die, it's all over. So your rewards are short. He goes on to say in this reading, again I saw that under the sun the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor bread to the wise, nor riches to the intelligent, nor favor to those with knowledge, but time and chance happen to them all. For man does not know his time, like fish that are taken in an evil net, and like birds that are caught in a snare, so are the children of men snared at an evil time, and it suddenly falls upon them. So you go along and you do your work as good as you can, and next thing you know, life gets hold of you and things go south. So maybe a little foolishness is what we ought to do. Chapter 10, verses 1 through 3 and 5 through 7. Dead flies make the perfumer's ointment give off a stench. So a little folly outweighs wisdom and honor. A wise man's heart inclines him to do right, but the fool's heart to the left. Even when the fool walks on the road, he lacks sense, and he says to everyone that he's a fool. There is an evil that I've seen under the sun, as it were an error proceeding from the ruler. Folly is set in many high places, and the rich sit in a low place. I've seen slaves on horses and princes walking on the ground like slaves. So why not just be foolish? At least you can just be a nut and maybe not have as many of these things beset you in life. And then he has the folly of planning, chapter 11, verses 1 through 5. Throw your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days. Give a portion to 7, give an even to 8. For you do not know what disaster will happen on earth. If the clouds are full of rain, they empty themselves on the earth. And if a tree falls to the south or to the north, in the place where the tree falls, there it will lie. He who observes the wind will not sow, but he who regards the clouds will not reap. As you do not know the way of the Spirit that comes into the bones of the womb of a woman with child, so you do not know the work of God who makes everything. So you can plan, and you can plan to sow and plan to harvest, and it's like a tree falling in the forest. If it goes to the left, it goes to the left. If it goes to the right, it goes to the right. Wherever it falls, that's where it lies. So where are your fields going to lie as it goes through the time? They might not turn out very well at all. And fools may turn out doing better than a wise planning man. So enjoy what you can while you can. 11, 8 through 10. So if a person lives many years, let him rejoice in them, but let him remember that the days of darkness will be many. All that comes to vanity. Rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart, in the sight of your eyes, but know that for all these things, God will bring you into judgment. Remove vexation from your heart and put away pain from your body, for youth and the dawn of life are vanity. In fact, he's writing this when he has become an old man. And he said, life isn't as pleasant as it used to be. He's ebbing away, and what he used to could do, he couldn't do. So he says, at least enjoy your youth while you got it, but you won't have it very long. Vanity of vanities, 12:8. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, all is vanity. And then our last reading, what he knew before he started this. The potential he had to be a great ruler was there. He could have used his wisdom by dealing with the God who makes under the sun makes sense and gives perspective to life and shows that the things that happen in this life are not the end at all. At the end of the matter, when all has been said, fear God and keep his commandments. For this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment, every secret thing, whether good or evil. You're going to have to answer to God one day. So you need to think about what you're doing. And when he talks about this, he says, for this is what is the whole duty of man. There is a translation possible, and frankly, I think it makes more sense if you consider the context of the book. What will make a man whole? What will make him feel like he's got it made in life? What will get the things together to where he can take comfort in his life? Well, to fear God and keep his commandments, alternate translation, that's what makes a man whole. It is. What did the rich young ruler told? If you would be complete, go and sell all that you have and give it to the poor. Completeness wasn't in his wealth. Completeness wasn't in doing what he wanted to do when he wanted to do it, as often as he wanted to do it. Completeness could have been found and was offered to him in following God and following Jesus. But alas, he had many possessions, and he went away sad. So, this book's a lot like our era. What he's dealing with, a lot of people deal with in our culture. Far more than don't. And guess what? If Solomon couldn't find answers under the sun, what chance do we have at that? In fact, we don't have a chance anyway, because under the sun limits us to seeing only the things of this creation, and the picture is bigger than that. So unless we're able to factor in, well, what's the rest of the story, like Paul Harvey used to do, the rest of the story is God, and especially as we see him in Jesus Christ. That is what makes a man or a woman whole. That's what gives answers and makes sense out of what often is just craziness. If you're not a Christian, become one. Don't be governed completely by things under the sun. Sure, we have to take them into account. But don't put all our eggs in the here and now basket. That's not the only basket. It's not even the biggest basket. As a Christian, you will be able to fear God, respect God, keep his commandments, listen to him who is above the sun, and